invitation to be the chief guest in today's program. He is immediate past president of ISAS and winner of ISAS Lifetime Achievement Award in 2012. He is superannuated from the Department of Atomic Energy as outstanding scientist in 2015 after a distinguished service for about 4 decades. He headed the prestigious Public Awareness Division of the Department of Atomic Energy from 1999 to 2015. He was immediately offered Rajaramana Fellowship, and immediately after his superannuation, he was appointed as Secretary, Atomic Energy Education Society. Currently, he is Honorary Secretary of Indian Nuclear Society and is a member of the Managing Committee of National Association for Applications of Radioisotopes and Radiation in Industry. We are very blessed to have him as the chief guest of today's program. The speaker of today's webinar is Dr. B. Vijay Kumar, Officer in Charge, Environmental Surveillance Laboratory, KKNPP. He has nearly 30 years of experience in the environmental radiological surveillance techniques and related areas used in nuclear power plants. He has been instrumental in the setting up of the Environmental Survey Laboratory at the Kudankulam Power Project and has carried out pre-operational environmental radiological studies around Kudankulam site. Presently, he is officer in charge of Environmental Survey Laboratory at the Kudankulam plant. The topic of today's talk is nuclear power for clean, green, and sustainable energy security. This is a very important and relevant topic today. Nuclear power presents an excellent opportunity for the world to reduce its reliance on fossil fuel-powered energy sources without compromising access to energy needs, and all will undoubtedly continue to be the part of world's energy mix in the future. It will be difficult for the world to achieve the twin goals of ensuring sustainable energy supplies and curbing greenhouse gases without nuclear power. Alongside renewables and other innovative technologies, nuclear can make a significant contribution to achieving sustainable energy goals and enhancing energy security. However, there are lots of misgivings among the general public about safety of the nuclear power. A high level of public confidence in the safety of nuclear power is the need of the hour to expand nuclear energy in a big way. Sri Vijay Kumar, who has worked in the ESL of Kudankulam nuclear power plant, has a long working experience in the safety and environmental problems related to the nuclear power, and therefore is the right person to talk on this clean, green, and sustainable nature of the nuclear power, with a particular reference to the protection of environment and preserving ecology and the safe nature of nuclear power. We all look forward to his talk. This being the last talk in the webinar, I take this opportunity to thank all of you for their participation and support in this webinar series. Thank you all. Over to Anu.
Thank you, Nair sir. Now I request Dr. P.P. Chandrajudan, our National President, to speak a few words.
Thank you. Yes, Sri Manoharaji, Sri Vijay Kumar,
Sir,
yeah.
Speak loudly, sir. Volume low.
We have today distinguished scientists. Are you able to hear me?
No, sir.
There is some. Not able to hear? Here from my side, everything is okay. Okay.
Okay, proceed, sir.
Are you able to hear now?
Hello.
No, I am
Okay, sir.
Are you able to hear me?
Hello.
Hello,
Hello, sir.
are you able to hear me?
Yes, sir. Okay.
No, I would suggest you skip my speech and go ahead. Then
Okay,
let us
sir.
not waste time. Yeah.
Okay, okay, sir. Thank you. So as we all know, the chief guest of today's program is S.K. Malhotra, former outstanding scientist, Department of Atomic Energy, and former national president, ISAS. So with all your permission, I would like to introduce Dr. Malhotra. Dr. Malhotra superannuated from Department of Atomic Energy as outstanding scientist in 2015 after a distinguished service of 4 decades. Later, he served as Raja Ramana Fellow, and his major field of interest were hydrogen isotope separation, catalysis, fractional distillation, mass spectrometry, analytical techniques for characterization of heavy water, etc. Since 1999, as head Public Awareness Division of Department of Atomic Energy, he was responsible for planning, overseeing, and assessing the entire outreach program of Department of Atomic Energy, also the spokesperson of the department. He has authored several book chapters and has already delivered 500 invited lectures. And he has been bestowed upon with a number of awards for his contributions in science communications. And he is the immediate past president of ISAS, currently the Honorary Secretary of Indian Nuclear Society, and is also in the Managing Committee of National Association for Application of Radioisotopes and Radiation in Industry. Sir, we are really fortunate to have you as the chief guest of today's webinar. I request you to kindly inaugurate today's webinar and also to deliver the inaugural address. Over to you, sir.
Unmute, sir.
Yeah, thank you, all of you. And in fact, I think Nair Saab, Professor Joseph, and the madam just now, I think all three spoke a lot about me. I think chief guest is not so important. We should focus on the speaker and the topic. I think we should save time for him. And today's topic you have chosen, the topic is so close to my heart. You know, you have taken a risk. There is a possibility that I start speaking as chief guest and continue as a speaker and speak for about 90 minutes on this topic. But I will apply my own controls, don't worry. And in 2 minutes, I'm going to hand over the mic to the speaker. But I think I'm tempted to say a little about sustainable development and contribution of nuclear energy. Friends, as all of you will know, that United Nations has set up 17 sustainable development goals. They are known as SDGs. They set them up in 2008 and of course revised them in 2015, and they are to be achieved by 2030. Out of these 17 goals, the seventh goal is about providing affordable energy to all over the globe. So that is a very important, and in fact, UN is on record. They say that though it is only one goal, SDG 7 is the goal about providing electricity, but this SDG 7 is important for all the goals because all the 17 goals can be achieved only if SDG 7 can be achieved. And in that, again, UN is on the record. And it is well understood now, and probably the speaker will be explaining in detail that without nuclear power, this goal cannot be achieved. So as Dr. Nair also mentioned, that nuclear power is essential for meeting the twin goals of supplying sustainable energy for our increasing needs and at the same time mitigating or taking care of the global warming, that it does not happen. So I think these two things, they can be met only if nuclear power is there. And another thing I would like to tell is that often there is a tendency that whenever we speak about nuclear power, people start comparing it with renewable energy. Immediate comparison is with solar power. That tendency is there. Now here, let me tell you nuclear power in no way is in competition with any of the renewable resources, be it solar, wind, hydro. It is not in competition of any kind with these resources. In fact, the need of the hour is that renewable resources and nuclear, with hand in hand together, supplementing each other, they only can tackle the problem of that twin challenge of supplying enough electricity to all in such a manner that not increasing the carbon dioxide level. I think rest I leave to the speaker. And as far as the speaker is from Kudankulam, I am reminded a beautiful place which went into an unnecessary controversy in 2011 to 13. And of course, I think Vijay Kumar will be mentioning it, but I am also tempted to mention that when this controversy about Kudankulam was on the peak and the matter went to the Supreme Court, and there were allegations that setting up a nuclear power plant is like compromising with the Article 21 of the Constitution, which is about right to life. And I'm very happy to tell all of you that on 6th May 2013, the Honorable Supreme Court gave a decision, 400-page decision, in which I quote only one para, small para, and that para says that this allegation that nuclear power denies the right to life guaranteed under Article 21 of the Constitution, this is wrong. And in fact, the court goes on, the decision goes on to say that on the contrary, the nuclear power actually supplements or helps in achieving this target of right to life. I think rest I leave to the speaker, and I thank ISAS, particularly Dr. Nair, Dr. Chandrachudan, and Dr. Joseph for conducting such a wonderful series of these webinars. So 12 webinars with this today's webinar, we will have all the 12 webinars. So very happy that I am there for this 12th webinar. Last webinar of Dr. Grover, I could not attend because that was house full. I was told that already the more than 100 audience is there, so you cannot join. So today, in fact, I was very keen, so I joined well in advance. So my compliments to all of you and all the best to the speaker. Kudos. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. So as we all know, today's speaker is Dr. B. Vijay Kumar, Officer in Charge, Environmental Survey Lab, Kudankulam Nuclear Power Projects. Dr. K.S. Maya, former Principal, Government College, Tripunithura, will introduce the speaker. Over to you, ma'am.
Dr. Maya, please unmute. Unmute first. Yes, okay.
Good evening, all of you.
Good
It's a
evening.
great pleasure for me to introduce our speaker, Dr. B. Vijay Kumar, who is going to talk on the subject nuclear power for clean, green, and sustainable energy security. This subject is very relevant in the present scenario of increasing demand of energy, and Sri B. Vijay Kumar is the apt person to talk on this subject. About Sri B. Vijay Kumar, he is a postgraduate in chemistry and has 28 years of experience in environmental radiological surveillance around nuclear power plants, nuclear counting techniques, techniques of radiation detection and measurements, etc. He has been instrumental in the setup of environmental survey laboratory at Kudankulam and has carried out pre-operational environmental radiological studies around Kudankulam site. Presently, he is the officer in charge of environmental survey laboratory at Kudankulam. He has many achievements in his career. He was the principal collaborator of many projects and was one of the national team member of International Atomic Energy Agency coordinated research projects. He is a life member of the Institution of Chemists India and Indian Society of Analytical Scientists. About his research activities, he has published a number of papers in national and international journals. On behalf of all the participants and on behalf of all the members of ISAS, I heartily welcome you, sir, to deliver the talk. Thank you.
Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Am I audible?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, respected chief guest today, Dr. Malhotra sir, the webinar committee chairman, Dr. Nair, the program coordinator, Joseph sir, national president, ESAS, Dr. PP Chandrachudan sir. I'm really pleased to be here today as the last man, the 12th man of the series. But nevertheless, it will be on a very important subject. It's a good opportunity to share my views on the nuclear power sustainability goals and also the other issues concerning the nuclear sector. And it's also, I'm also a bit nervous because I am addressing a galaxy of scientists, retired scientists, and really great scientists. I'm sure Dr. Malhotra sir must have handled this at the height of Kudangulam Impose. He himself must have handled very tough public hostile behaviors and all that. So it's a very challenging area. Anyway, I hope I will be able to make a good presentation today, and mostly it is targeted towards non-DAE audience, because there is nothing new for our DAE scientists. Everything whatever I'm going to present, everything is known to them. So there is nothing new to offer. Whereas for the non-DAE audience, there will be some insight from this presentation. Okay, thank you. Slide is visible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, so today's talk will be on nuclear power for clean, green, and sustainable energy security. The concept of atom is indeed very old. It dates back to 6th century BC. The father of the atom, however, the Greek philosopher Democritus, who along with his master Leucippus, defined the atom as the smallest element of matter around 450 BC. Only in the 20th century beginning, physicists like Ernest Rutherford began to unravel the mysteries of the internal structure of the atom. Later, the famous Einstein's mass-energy relationship demonstrated the huge amount of energy which is locked up in the nucleus. Later, Fermi showed how this energy can be harnessed and exploited, which can be beneficial to the humankind at large. Now, this is the 60 years of nuclear energy story. We have had some contrasting statements coming from Lord Ernest Rutherford in 1933. The energy produced by breaking down the atom is a very poor kind of thing. Anyone who expects a source of power from the transformations of this atom is talking moonshine. This is the statement which we had in 1933, whereas in 1954, the chairman US Atomic Energy Commission remarked, it is not too much to expect that our children will enjoy in their homes nuclear generated electrical energy, too cheap to meter. Now in 2020, 66 years after the electricity was first produced by nuclear power and delivered to the grid, we know the truth lies somewhere towards the right extreme. Now this is the timeline we can see for the nuclear power. The first civilian reactor to send nuclear electricity to the grid was in Obninsk, USSR, 1954. And we have had different timelines. The 100 gigawatt mark was breached before 1980. Then we reached in the mid 80s, 200 gigawatt. Just before 1990, 300 gigawatts electricity, nuclear electricity was reached. And today we produce around 392 gigawatt of electricity through nuclear power. And we have had our own reactors at Tarapur 1 and 2 in the year 1969. And from there we have progressed to Kudangulam, and recently we had a 700 megawatt PHWR reactor going stream in Kakrapa. The total numbers of reactors which are in operation today is 442, producing around 392 gigawatt electrical energy. And the reactors under construction are 53 numbers, accounting for some 56 gigawatt electrical energy, most of them in China. And if you also see the type of reactors that are operating as well as that are being constructed, you will see that the type which we have in Kudangulam, VVER, is the majority type. You can see some 64% of VVERs are operating the world over. Also, some 84% of VVERs are under construction. Similarly, the PHWRs, which is the mainstay of India, is operating around 11% of the reactors are PHWR type, which is the mainstay of India. The growth of installed capacity in, if we see from 1950s, just after independence, we just had 2 gigawatt electrical capacity, and then we progressed to 223 in the year 2013, and today it's around 372 gigawatt electrical capacity, installed capacity. And world and India energy scenario, if you look at, still we have a long way to go, because the per capita electricity consumption is around 1100. Let us say it's around 1100, whereas the advanced countries like USA, Japan are almost, they have crossed 13,000. USA and Japan has crossed around 8,000, whereas the world average is around 3,000 kilowatt hour per capita. This slide was shown in the last week's presentation also by Dr. Grover. The human development and per capita consumption, they are very closely related. And this human development index is a comparative measure of life expectancy, literacy, education, and standards of living. Here, countries fall into 4 broad categories based on their human development index: very high, high, medium, and low. And 4,000 kilowatt hour per person per year is the dividing line between the developed and developing countries. And here, India is in the lower extreme. So we have much more to produce, and we have to scale up our installed capacities and also the per capita electricity availability to a person. If you see the Indian electricity mix, more than half plate is still being supplied by the thermal, composed of coal, gas, and diesels. The renewables are accounting around 20%, hydro is around 14%, and nuclear electricity, 6,780 megawatt, is from nuclear electricity, and it's accounting under 2% only right now. And future forecast, as per the integrated energy policy projection for the next 25 years to meet 7 to 9% of GDP growth, projects that nuclear has to be increased to around 10% to realize the total installed capacity of around 700 gigawatt by year 2035 or so. And this is the inconsistency of a renewable source, because that Malhotra Saab was mentioning sometime back in his inaugural address about the inconsistency, or maybe the comparison between the nuclear and the renewables. This is the problem with the renewable. One of the problem is the inconsistency of the power generation. We can see here during the southwest monsoon, when the wind speed is quite comfortable, we have a good generation from April to October. This is for one particular year, we have put it here. The 2015-16 financial year we have put, and the rest of India as well as Tamil Nadu. Here we can see the peak is good during the southwest monsoon time, when the wind profile or the wind is comfortably good, but then it tapers towards the other 6 months. So we don't produce the power perennially throughout the year. This is the nuclear energy competitiveness. Cost wise, if you compare the nuclear energy, electricity, the cost is very competitive, and nuclear electricity from Tarapur, still it is under 1 rupee, and Kudangulam electricity is under 4 rupees. It's quite competitive compared to other sources of electricity generation. And this is the scorecard we have. Air pollution was responsible for some 3.2 million deaths in 2010 and 3.5 million deaths in the year 2013. And most polluted cities were in China and India, where most frequently people have to use masks. Much before the onslaught of corona, people had to use masks in polluted cities, both in China as well as in India. Here we can see the students wearing face masks, walking across the street in a line in Jinan, in East China's Shandong province, amongst heavy air pollution. For any energy to be exploited for the benefit of the human kind and for the benefit of the mankind, we have to balance 3 E's. One is the energy, the other one is the economics, the third one is the environment. the energy has to be a good source, a sustainable source, and it has to be viable, should be economically feasible, and it should not be hazardous to the environment. These three E's have to be properly balanced for any energy to be economically and environmentally possible. And this is the another one which is staring at us, the climate change issues. The climate system of the Earth atmosphere is constantly changing. Global mean surface temperatures are rising and change in rainfall patterns. Oceans are warming up, sea levels are rising. Features of extreme weather and climate events are changing. 50 to 85% reduction in greenhouse gases is required by 2050. These are forecasts of climate change. We can have the increased water stress, droughts, heat waves, floods, less agricultural productivity, damage to ecosystems, 30% of terrestrial species facing growing risk of extinction, coral bleachings in oceans, damage from floods and storms, human health, increased morbidity, mortality. All these things are forecasts of the climate change, which if left unattended, we will have all these problems. The global energy challenge, we have the energy, which is very central to the development, which is required to alleviate poverty, improving human welfare, rising living standards. Energy is a precondition for all other investments, manufacturing, industry, healthcare, human capital, gender equity, and social equity. And 2.6 billion people rely on traditional biomass as their primary source of energy. Then 1.3 billion people do not have still access to electricity. This is a very famous thing which we all know, the greenhouse effect. The more and more fossil fuels are used, more and more carbon dioxide and other gases will be there in the atmosphere, and they will trap the outgoing solar radiation, and they will re-emit the heat, and long wave emission of long wave infrared radiation back to the atmosphere takes place. So this leads to the warming of the earth. Also, the carbon dioxide levels in the atmosphere has steadily increased, and it has now touched more than 400, and the ocean pH has steadily dropped, and it is now becoming almost close to 8.05. And if we compare the world CO2 emissions by sector, we can see heat, electricity, and transport account for 2/3 of the total global emissions. So this still it is the case. And carbon dioxide is produced while burning coal, wood, diesel, and oil. Now, 1 unit of electricity generated using nuclear, it produces no carbon dioxide at all, unlike coal, oil, and gas, where we are left with some carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. And climate change is no longer a distant threat, and that is the prediction, is an overarching environmental problem of our times. Nuclear power needs to be part of the solution to combat this type of issues, which is looming large. This is another attractive feature which we can say for the nuclear power. The fuel consumption is the least of all the type of electricity generation source for a 1000 megawatt plant, with 75% annual utilization. We can say oxygen consumption, carbon dioxide emission. Last column you can see sulfur dioxide, nitrogen oxides, dust, ash. Everything is zero, and that fuel requirement is also one of the least for the nuclear power plant. So the nuclear power plants do not release any harmful gases, and they do not release any particulates. They help protect the ozone layer, and they help reduce the global warming, preserves the air quality, and keeps our environment clean and green. So they can be built very close to the area where we need to have the electricity, unlike hydro. Otherwise, long transmission lines will be required. So this will help cutting down the transmission losses. This is another advantage we can have. And nuclear is a clean air solution for our power generation. The life cycle greenhouse gas emissions intensity of the electricity generation methods, if we compare for different types, the nuclear ranks among the lowest, along with wind and hydroelectric. This is the life cycle greenhouse gas emissions. That is, suppose if you start the full cycle, like from starting from mining, milling, fabrication, operation, reprocessing, waste management, everything put together, nuclear ranks amongst one of the lowest, along with wind and hydroelectric. So climate change, it is the only way we can go ahead. Nuclear power is the only low carbon technology that is now available today that has the potential to be deployed on a wide scale and in large capacities to help meet the global climate energy challenge. So more and more nuclear power has to be resorted to in order to tackle and in order to mitigate the consequences of the climate change. Then again, coming to the water side, these releases from the nuclear power stations do not pollute the water bodies. They preserve and help improve the habitat for plant life and also the wildlife. They provide safe haven for marine life and no harmful pollutants in the cooling waters that is discharged from the reactors. They meet Clean Water Act requirements and they meet the limits on temperature and mineral content. So absolutely no load on the aquatic systems which is surrounding the nuclear power stations. So these are the factors which are favoring nuclear power. They will help mitigate the climate change and they could account for 15% greenhouse gas emissions reduction by the year 2050. And other issues are the increasing fossil fuel prices, the depletion of the fossil fuels, reliability of the supply sources. Now we have ample uranium resources all over the world. We have access to the international market and also we have started we have started exploring the local resources which are available in India, and also we have free access and international access to the uranium market. And uranium as a fuel cost, it's a small fraction of nuclear electricity, so it prevents local and regional air pollution. It's the lowest external cost in terms of damage to human health and environment. So these are all the factors which are favoring the nuclear power. So nuclear power is a sustainable source of energy. They provide a national pride. They improve the living standards, contributes to a national economic development. The spin-offs from nuclear power technology are also very good for the benefits of human. Also, they create job opportunities around the nuclear power stations. It supports local communities located nearby the plant to become most developed villages and contribute to the environmental protection. And this slide was shown maybe in the last presentation. Also, it was shown. This is the three-stage program of India. So, first stage we concentrate on the thermal reactors, PHWR, which is based on the natural uranium. Then the fuel which is reprocessed will go to the second stage of the breeder reactors, which will be fueled using plutonium. Their thorium blankets will be used, and the fissile material, again uranium-233, which is obtained, will be used in the third stage of the uranium-233 fuel reactors. Again, where the thorium again will be utilized for breeding, so that ultimately we will have an energy security for 500 years. This is the estimation here. And the second stage, 30 years, and third stage, when you start using the thorium reserves, which is widely present in India, so 500 years energy security can be assured. This is the vision of Indian nuclear power program. And this is PHWR program of India, which is the mainstay of India, we can say. And it was started very modestly in the year 1970s in Rajasthan, Rawatbhatta site. And then the indigenization process was done in the 80s, went on to standardization in the 80s, then consolidation, then commercialization in the 2000s, where many 220 megawatt standard units were constructed and commissioned. Then it was scaled up to 540 megawatt in Tarapur. Now further scaled up to 700 megawatt electrical at Kakrapara 3, 4, and Rajasthan 7, 8. Further strategies for long-term energy security. This is the projected requirement. So we can see here a deficit of 412 gigawatt. We have a deficit here of 412 gigawatt electrical. Here, the additionalities like LWRs, the LWR imports like Kudangulam and other sites and the fast breeder reactors will literally wipe out the deficit in the year 2050. The deficit from 410 gigawatt is reduced down to around 7 gigawatt electrical in the year 2050 by the additionalities and the second stage programs. Now, what are the concerns about nuclear power? So we have all now discussed about why we should go nuclear and why we should embrace the nuclear power. But then there are several concerns about the nuclear power in the public side. What are they? One is the radiation concern. People always say about radiation. Then we have the nuclear safety, whether the reactors are safe or not. Then we have the environmental safety. Is it safe to the environment or whether it harms the environment? Then ecological safety, whether it is safe for the flora and fauna, biota, waste disposals. Then we have the proliferation concerns, military purposes as well as the electricity, peaceful purposes, then public consultations. Now, coming to the first one, first concern, radiation. Radiation is a part of life. It is an inescapable part of life. Wherever we go, we have to face radiation. Radiation is a part and parcel of our life. We get radiation from sun, outer space, the radioactive materials present in the earth, house we live, the food we eat, the air we breathe, the buildings where we live. From all sources, we get radioactivity. So radiation is omnipresent. It is present everywhere. So it is there in the food we eat, it is there. And some radioisotopes are even present inside our body, like some potassium 40 of potassium element. The potassium is a very essential nutrient for our body functions, whereas potassium is having one radioactive cousin, potassium 40, which is radioactive. Similarly, carbon 14, polonium 210. Some radionuclides are there, which is present inside our body also, which are naturally present. And the main concern for this radiation is this: we cannot see, we cannot feel, and we cannot taste. And this is the major concern. That is why the fear of unknown is playing in the public mind. There are different types of sources. The population exposure comes from different sources, like natural sources and man-made sources. Natural sources, again, there are two types. One is the external exposure, the other one is the internal exposure. The external exposure comes from cosmic rays and terrestrial radiation. The internal exposure comes from radon, thoron, cosmogenic nucleides, and singly occurring naturally present radionuclides and series nuclides like uranium series, thorium series, and all that. Then we have among the man-made sources, the bulk of the radiation we get from the medical applications of the radiation, like occupational medical exposure and diagnostic, therapeutic. Then nuclear activities, nuclear fuel cycle, nuclear tests, nuclear accidents which have happened in the past. Similarly, the nuclear tests which were conducted in the past. Then miscellaneous applications like industry, consumer products, research, air travel, which also incurs good radiation, cosmic radiation dose. Then technologically enhanced natural radiation fuel cycle. All these things constitute radiation dose to human beings. And on an average, all human beings are subject to this radiation dose, this 2.4 millisievert per year. Millisievert is a unit of radiation dose, and 2.4 millisievert per dose is available. And wherever the person lives, on an average, a person gets 2.4 millisievert natural dose. Wherever he goes, he will get this dose. And among man-made sources, as I mentioned already, we get around 0.6 millisievert per year due to the applications of radiation in medical, like X-rays, diagnostic purposes, therapeutic uses, and all that. So if you compare the percentage of radiation which we get from the releases, where people should be concerned, it's only 0.1%, whereas the 85% radiation is coming from the natural sources, and again 14.2% is coming from medical radiation, and 0.6% from fast fallout and all that. Then 0.45% is for the occupational exposure. Only 0.1% dose or the radiation people get from the power industry, nuclear power industry. And this is the radioactivity which is around us. You take air, fresh water, seawater, milk, fruits, vegetables, even human body, as I mentioned, cereals, pulses, topsoil, wood, brick. All these items have quite a good amount of naturally present radioactivity. And this is the natural background radiation in various cities: Mumbai, Kolkata, Delhi, Chennai, Bangalore, and all that. Now, if you shift from Mumbai to Kolkata, you get 216 microgray, which is additional radiation dose, because in Mumbai we have only 484, whereas if you move to Delhi, it becomes 700. So 216 microgray more we get. This is 10 times more than the dose that you get from a nuclear power plant. So this is the natural radiation dose, whereas by living near a nuclear power station for 1 year, you will get a very least amount of radiation dose, whereas by moving from one city to next city, you get 10 times the dose what you get from a nuclear power station by living there for 1 year. And these are certain naturally high background radiation areas around the world. We have certain places in Brazil, China, and also we have the Kerala coast like Karnagapalli, Chavra, where we have the monocyte sand, where the dose is much higher than a normal background radiation area. Suppose the normal background is around 2.4 millisievert, there people get around 10 to 15 millisievert per year, whereas the normal background area is only 2.4 millisievert or maybe 2 to 3 millisievert per year. But people in the high background radiation area are leading a very comfortable and very healthy lifestyle, and there is no problem whatsoever to the people living in the high background radiation area. This is the radiation background at the different states of India. We can see around 800 is the national average here, 800 microsievert. This is the average radiation dose at different states. Now, coming to this dose from exposure to various radiation sources, you can see here the nuclear fuel cycle gives a dose of around 0.1 to 0.2 microsievert per year, whereas the total background radiation itself is 2,400 microsievert, and ingestion from food and water is 290 microsievert. Radon gives a dose of around 1260 microsievert in a year, and also the coal plant stack also releases due to the concentration of the coal that is being used, and also the fly ash that is being released, and gas plant stack releases, coal plant stack releases. All these things release some amount of radiation. These are the average annual doses from practices in 2008, and global average doses from accidents, they are all very less. Fukushima, Chernobyl, nuclear test fallout, they are also listed here. And this is electricity the collective dose from different electricity generation, like coal-fired power plants, then oil power plant, peat-fired power plant, natural gas power plant, geothermal plants, nuclear power plants. You can see the coal-fired power plants also contribute to some radiation dose. It's not only the nuclear power plant, whereas other plants also contribute to some type of dose because of these technologically enhanced radiation materials. Now, as I mentioned earlier, high background radiation area, the average dose is 10 to 15 millisievert per year, whereas the average dose is only 2.4. In a radiation worker working in a nuclear power plant gets an average dose of only 0.4 millisievert per year, whereas the dose limit authorized by AERB or approved by AERB for a worker working in a nuclear power plant is 20 millisievert per year. So here we have a safe margin of around 50 here. Similarly, for members of the public, if we consider the average dose to the public from operation of a nuclear facility or a nuclear power plant is 0.05 to 0.1 microsievert per year, whereas the allowed dose limit by the regulator, Atomic Energy Regulatory Board, is 1000 microsievert per year. Here we have a safe margin of around 20,000. And eating one banana gives you a dose of 0.1 microsievert. Now that is another thing. This is called banana equivalent dose, 1 BED. Eating one banana will give you 1.1 microsievert, whereas this dose you will not get by living in the vicinity of a nuclear power plant for 1 year. Now coming to the reactor safety, the reactor safety philosophy is based on the control of radioactivity, the confinement of radioactive material, and also the cooling of radioactive material. These 3 C's have to be controlled: control of radioactivity, confinement of radioactive material, and cooling of radioactive material. This control of radioactivity is achieved by fast-acting safe shutdown devices. Similarly, the confinement of radioactive material is achieved to maintain the barrier to limit the radioactive releases to the public. There are multiple barriers. The radioactivity, just like that, cannot escape to the environment. There are multiple barriers, which we'll see in the next slide. Similarly, the residual heat has to be constantly removed from the fuel by cooling of the radioactive material. If these 3 C's are ensured, the reactor is always stable. The reactor safety is further assured by stringent quality standards, stringent international codes and standards. Seismic qualification is carried out by analysis and testing. Environmental qualification is carried out, and probabilistic safety assessment studies are carried out to assure the reactor safety, and fail-safe operation and safety system are assured. Then online testing without affecting operation. All these types of stringent quality criteria are carried out before starting a reactor. The basic principles of ensuring safety, then we can see there is a safe design, then we have the safe operation, contingency measures. Safe design is ensured by a proven technology, by adopting defense in depth approaches, and also by assuring good quality materials. Then safe operation is ensured by qualified and trained operators. This all our nuclear engineers, they are just like these pilots. They will be undergoing this refresher training. They have a simulator. They have to undergo this type of training every now and then, and they will be relicensed. They have the proven operating procedures, and operating experience feedback is always discussed and shared, and safety culture is nurtured. Contingency measures for all the safety systems, and for all the systems we have the engineered safety measures and engineered safety features. Then emergency operating procedures are in place to take care of any deviations. Then each nuclear power plant has got a robust emergency preparedness plan to address any uneven eventuality in case if it is required. Then defense in depth is also assured by several barriers. One is the multiple barriers which we'll discuss, then reliable process systems, reliable safety systems, then competent operating and maintenance staff, then detect and correct failure like STAR, stop, act, think, and review. That approach is always used to ensure that defense in depth approaches. Then assumption for defense in depth takes care of probable error in the design, probable equipment failure, and also the possible human error. All these things are addressed in the probabilistic safety assessment and defense in depth approaches. Now the concept of defense in depth. So here we have multiple barriers are provided to prevent any leakage of radioactivity to the atmosphere and ensure the safety of the plant personnel, the public, and the environment. So we have the fuel pellet, which is encapsulated in a clad. Then we have the primary heat transport system, or called the primary coolant boundary. Then we have a primary containment steel-lined structure, which is there. Then we have a secondary containment. So radioactivity, which is there here, cannot just like that come out to the environment. And zoning concept is also followed around the nuclear power station. They have a buffer zone of 1.6 kilometer. They call it as an exclusion zone, where no habitation is permitted. It is under the exclusive control of the operator. And we have a low population zone called a sterilized zone, where 5 kilometer more influx and migration of population is not allowed. So these two things are also ensured as an abundant caution. In safety assessment principles, as we discussed already, the radiation workers are allowed a dose limit of 20 millisievert, whereas the basic safety objective is to control it at around 1 millisievert. Coming to the public, the 1 millisievert is the authorized limit, it's the approved limit by the regulator AERB, whereas the dose objective is to control it at around 0.02, is 20 microsievert, whereas for a modern plant like Kudangulam, it's around 0.1 microsievert, which is having a margin of around 20,000. Now, this is another thing which you can see, the life-threatening dose, if you imagine as the height of an Eiffel Tower. Suppose if you consider this as the life-threatening dose, the dose what the worker in a nuclear power plant gets is the height of 2 to 3 meters, and the public, whatever public dose is there, it's almost the size of a brick. Now, at each nuclear power station, we have an environmental survey laboratory, which takes care of the environmental surveillance aspects. And these laboratories are set up much before the plant goes into operation. So they start with the pre-operational and baseline studies, and they go on to do the operational monitoring afterwards. So these laboratories are there at every nuclear power plant, and baseline data are collected, demographic survey, health status, all these things are compiled during the pre-operational phase itself. So they take the radioactivity measurements in air, water, foodstuff, and all that. And during the operational phase, the assessment of radiation dose received by the members of the public due to NPP operations is carried out to demonstrate the compliance of the effective dose received by population. Assessment of the radiological impact of NPP operation on the local environment is continuously carried out, and the radionuclide distribution and concentration in different environmental matrices are also profiled constantly. These are the different samples which are normally collected, analyzed, and monitored for any buildup of radioactivity or any contamination. Aquatic side, we monitor water, sediment, weed, seafoods, and terrestrial side, air, fallout, soil, grass, milk, land crops, meat, thyroid, water, all these things are sampled, and the radioactivity is constantly watched and monitored. And if any deviation is there, immediately the operator is informed and corrective actions are taken. It's just a state-of-the-art instrumentation for radiation measurement in an environmental survey laboratory. It's a hyperpure germanium detector. You can see the detector is inside. We keep the sample inside, and it is enclosed, or it is put in a very 12 centimeter thick lead castle to prevent all this extraneous radiation, so that we can get the signals from the sample without any noise signal from the backgrounds. So environmental impact, we can say it is almost negligible from a nuclear power station. It's almost the releases are zero, and also the environmental impact is just 0.07 to 1.1% of the natural background radiation. So they pose no threat to workers, no threat to the public, no threat to the society. No deaths have ever resulted from radiation in a nuclear power plant. No significant radiation releases have ever taken place. By contrast, accidents, injuries, illnesses, and deaths related to other energy sources are much common. So nuclear power is safe, no radiation hazards, and generation cost is competitive, no impact on the environment. These are the positives coming out from nuclear. Then coming to the ecological safety, the water is used for cooling in NPP and discharged back to the sea. They use the condenser coolant water. This is common for all types of plants like coal, oil, gas, and nuclear. It's not that only nuclear is using this. Water released from the nuclear power plant is only slightly warm, and it well below the limit prescribed by the MOEF-CC, and it should be less than 7 degrees centigrade. The scientific studies by 7 universities in collaboration with Board of Research in Nuclear Science has found that water discharged from NPP does not affect fish or other aquatic marine life. The operation of NPP for several years has shown that there is bountiful fish catch, as always. So here, vibrant fish activities and fishing activity going on in the vicinity of the nuclear power stations. And in Kudangulam, we have gone one step further. We have a unique fish protection facility is provided in the intake water structure. This facility takes care of the juvenile fishes which drift along with the flow of cooling water, and they help them move away from the intake structures by not getting trapped in the machinery. The fish are helped in getting back to the seawater, and they don't get to the intake water lines. And this is a very unique facility which is accommodated in Kudangulam design. This is a marine life protection. What we see here is the Kaizen structure, and here we have the intake water structure where a screen, mesh screen is put, and also a air bubble curtain is available which drifts the fishes away to the seawater, and they help the fishes back to the sea. So there is no fish trap in the machinery. Then at all the nuclear power station, we have a very robust environment stewardship program. It's a very voluntary initiative by the nuclear power stations. It's beyond the regulatory and statutory scope and fulfillment. They try to achieve the biodiversity and habitat conservation. They train the local volunteers, sensitize the public on local environment. The exclusion zone, which is under the exclusive control of the operator, is used for green belting and landscaping. So this becomes a very clean, green, and tranquil environment, hosting water bodies and a gamut of plant and wildlife. The 1.6 kilometer zone is preserved in its pristine form. It's located near water bodies like sea, river, lakes, etc. It's a home to a variety of birds and rare species. In collaboration with the NGOs and local naturalists, surveys are conducted for census and nature awareness. Tie up with Bombay Natural History Society and Indian Bird Conservation Network in arranging workshops and training. All these things are taken up as a a proactive environmental measure to support the environment care. And over 5,000 bird varieties have been spotted in the wetlands around nuclear power plants, and they will be potential sites in the future for ecotourism and the pest-free green landscape for butterflies, moths, insects, and birds. We have butterfly gardens around Tarapur and Kakrapar. Then we have the plantations of different species in these zones to attract various life forms. So these are some of the photographs taken around Kudangulam. It's a long view of the. These are some of the winged visitors, like these are threatened, nearly threatened birds, which come to the plant area. The wood sandpiper. These are some of the birds which have come near Kudangulam. So we have taken a photograph. And to go one step further, we have a nature club at all the nuclear power stations. For example, in Kudangulam, we have a pelican nature club. It is named after, or it is maintained after a threatened bird. So at Kalpakam, we have a stork nature club. At Narora, we have a skimmer nature club. So it is, a particular bird variety which is threatened is taken care, and special care is taken to support. Then let us come to the next issue, which is the waste management. It's a waste management and disposal issues. So storage technologies are now very sound, and storage options and the technologies are now available to treat waste as safe as possible. And as mentioned in the last presentation, we follow in India a closed nuclear fuel cycle. So whatever fuel comes out, that goes for reprocessing. So it doesn't go as a waste. So the fuel gets reprocessed, and only after reprocessing, whatever fissile materials are taken away, the high level waste, which is very low and manageable volume, is processed as per the requirement. And it's a myth that it's an insoluble waste management is an insoluble problem. But of all the energy forms, if you see, nuclear yields the least and most manageable, easily manageable waste. Waste in fuel preparation and plant operation. Suppose if we compare this, nuclear offers the least waste in fuel preparation and plant operation, along with solar. And so this, I have already mentioned this. We are following a closed fuel cycle. Spent fuel is reprocessed, and valuable fissile materials are recovered. And this is a different categorization of the waste. We have very low level waste, we have low level waste, we have intermediate level waste, we have high level waste. So depending upon the half-life and the activity content, they are categorized. And for each category, we have different types of management solutions. Like low level waste will go for near surface disposals. Some of the very low level waste will be for landfill disposals. And only the high level waste, which is of little concern, will be treated properly. They will be going for some treatments like vitrification and all that, and they only will merit some long-term storage and deep geological disposal type of things. And if you look at the constituents of spent nuclear fuel, we can see 99.1% is again uranium and plutonium. Only we have the 0.5% is again fission products, cesium, strontium. Here, the cesium is again a very useful radionuclide in agriculture, industry, medicine, and all that. They are recovered. And stable or short-lived fission products are of no concern. So only the high-level waste, which is very, very least in quantity, have to be properly managed and treated. Suppose if we compare a coal-based plant and a nuclear plant, we can see the waste comparison. The high-level waste for a 1,000 megawatt electrical nuclear plant is only 0.074 tons per day, whereas in case of a coal-based power plant, you can see so many tons per day of carbon dioxide, sulfur dioxide, nitrogen oxides, toxic metals, ashes. All those things are missing, and they are not there in the nuclear power plant. So nuclear power plant, a 1,000 megawatt plant, 27 tons of spent fuel or 3 cubic meters after processing and vitrification. This is the least which can be easily stored and stored in the campus where the nuclear power plants are located. Then the proliferation concerns. People mix up these military uses as well as the the peaceful applications of electricity generation. Here, there is a myth that nuclear reactors breed weapons. It has got a very little foundation, because when Hiroshima and Nagasaki happened, there were no reactors in operation. And the first few countries which built nuclear bombs did so before moving to electricity generation to nuclear power. So it is not an intermediate step. Electricity generation is not required for this, for making these bombs. This program is separate and the other program is different. So nuclear power sector is only for peaceful applications of nuclear energy. And this radiation finds applications in other sectors as well, like, in irradiation of the foodstuff, where we can extend the shelf life, and also the pathogenic bacteria and other harmful pathogens can be killed and shelf life can be extended. These food and waterborne diarrheal diseases are estimated to kill roughly 2.2 million people annually, of which 1.9 are children. So irradiating this food can help keep the quality by destroying these pathogenic organisms. And it can be applied to a variety of foods, from spices and seasonings to fruits and vegetables. It's almost similar to pasteurization, what we do for milk, but the temperature that is there for the other one is not there for this. And they also find applications in removing 95% of sulfur dioxide and 70% of nitrogen oxides from the flue gases. This electron beam technology which is emerging, they can help remove this type of other oxides of sulfur and nitrogen, and the resulting residue can be a good fertilizer for applications in agriculture. Then we all know how this radiation finds applications in cancer care, therapeutics, and diagnostic areas. Then finally, coming to the public acceptance, this is the most challenging part. Though we do everything, now we have to keep the public on board. The public has to be consulted at each stage now, especially now nuclear power plant is being expanded in a very big, large manner. We are going to have fleet type nuclear power plants at different sites. So everywhere we have to do the environmental clearance, and public consultation has to be carried out. And convincing public is the real challenge, and it's also an art. So probably Dr. Malhotra Saab must be agreeing with me. It's a real challenge as well as an art to take the public on board. So, but now in all power stations and also in DAE, we have a very robust and very vigorous public awareness programs where we try to reach out to the public, and also we try to convince them. We try to answer to their misgivings, needs. Then there is a community development program. There is also a neighborhood welfare program which is taking place. Then there is a corporate social responsibility schemes. The operator and the organizations are doing a lot of beneficial schemes. They are implementing several schemes for the neighborhood as a corporate social responsibility. So we hope all these things will become positives for us in the near future to help expand nuclear power in a big way. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. So now this session is open for discussion. We can clear the doubts with Vijay Kumar, sir.
Questions in the chat message.
Hello, sir. I am Dr. Jain from AMD. I want to ask the question whether this near the thermal power station. No? Hello. Hello, sir.
Yeah, I'm not getting you, sir.
Hello, sir.
Yes, sir.
Hello, I am Dr. Jain from Nagpur AMD, sir.
Okay, sir.
I want to ask some questions regarding environmental surveillance. Suppose nearby the nuclear power station, some any environmental surveillance study has been done In that way, fruit sample, plant samples, and other aquatic environment, how you have analyzed, you have a standard operating procedure for that?
Yes. We have a standard operating procedures. We health, safety, and environment group has got a very big procedure manual and all that. We take part in intercomparison exercise, which is organized by International Atomic Energy Agency, and we also assure our quality by participating in such intercomparison programs.
Can you provide me some data and some SOP for that, sir? I am also analyzing some fruit samples, sir.
Yeah, you can send me a mail. You can send me a mail.
Okay, sir. I will send my mail, sir. Okay. Thank you, sir.
No, you can send me a personal mail.
Okay, sir. Okay.
Yeah, you can, for SOP and other things, you can send me a personal mail.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
And along with some detection limit also.
Sir, your voice is breaking. I'm not getting your voice clearly.
Okay, now I heard, sir. Okay, I will send my mail, then you just respond for me.
Yeah, okay, sir.
Dr. Vijay Kumar, it was a very nice talk.
Yes, sir.
Am I audible?
Yes. Yeah, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
See, only one complimentary thing I want to say, that BRNS has supported one project for fish breeding using during the thermal ecological studies, which showed that the heat exchanger output, the Kaiga, with at the junction of the Kaiga output and the Kadira reservoir, they conducted a study and found that the slightly enhanced temperature, the fish breeding rate is also increased. And one breeding facility was set up in Kaiga reactor. Under SIFI, the Central Fisheries Institute, Bombay. Dr. Paul was the coordinator, and they found that the breeding rate of fish has increased, and they wanted to take as a project, and as a community project around Kaiga station. I just wanted to add on to what you said.
And not only that, even growth rate also increased. I am there. I am Dr. A.K. Paul. I was the PI of that project. Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Paul.
Yes. Growth rate also increases around 30% if you increase little, rear the fish in little higher temperature.
Yeah.
So that was an excellent actually work we did at Kaiga. And regarding Kudamkulan also, we did a lot of work, environmental studies, another thing with ESL lab, Kudamkulan, in Kalpakam. With Rajaram, we did a lot of work. But I have one query only. So there is a no harm, but why these developed countries now reducing the nuclear power stations, particularly the Germany, France, now they are closing the nuclear power station. Why it is so?
They have actually enough power. I think they don't need to produce more power. Moreover, they have enough power. They are not power hungry. That is one reason.
Okay.
I think they are importing power. Most foreign countries now, US is against building. US is again building, and UAE has started one plant recently. One plant has at Bakshar, one plant has gone on stream. Especially this France and Germany, they are already comfortable with their power scenario. They are not power short countries, and they also import power from neighboring countries. Probably Dr. Malhotra sir would like to add something to that, sir.
In fact, I was thinking that shall I see, this question is always asked. Some examples will be given, because see, for example, Germany has told after Fukushima accident, they announced that by 2022 they will close down all their existing power stations and they will not build any in the future. So the world over, the environmentalists, they will say that if Germany is doing that, why not India does that? So my reply, in fact, even in some international forums, I was put up with this question. And I will tell what is my standard reply, which I have standardized. I have told, particularly if they give the example of Germany, then the thing is, see, first thing is, as Vijay Kumar told very correctly, that you look at what is their current power consumption per capita. I think it is in the excess of 8,000 kilowatt hours per person per year. We are sitting at close to 1,100 kilowatt hours per person per year. So, I mean, almost 1/10 of what Germany is consuming. Okay, so I always say that these countries, Germany, or if you go to USA, it is in excess of 1,300. If you go to Sweden, it is about 18,000 kilowatt hours per person per year. Of course, we don't want to compete with them, but at least we want to have some respectable figure. So in India, for example, we propose that by the middle of the century, for the population of India, the per capita consumption should be around 5,000 kilowatt hours per person per year. So present 1,100, it should be 5,000, and multiplied by the population of India at that time, which is expected to be 155 billion. So I mean, so 155 crore. Sorry. So when you multiply this, that gives you that what should be the total installed capacity. So what I'm trying to tell you is, as Vijay Kumar told very correctly, we are power hungry people, while Germany and the so-called first world countries, probably they are having indigestion because of excess electricity. So you can't compare their situation with our situation. All the developing countries, not only India, all the developing countries, and not only nuclear, you look at the new installation of power stations all over the world. If you see, it is the third world countries. Basically, it is Asia. Now Asia is going to be the champion. All new coming up power stations, whether nuclear or others, they are coming up in Asia. And of course, I mean, if they can, the first world countries, World Energy Council and International Atomic Energy Agency, they have recognized the fact that if this increased power, installed power in the third world countries, if it continues to be fossil, I think world will come to an end earlier than expected. So they are facilitating. See, earlier in 1950s, nuclear was a secret. Nobody was allowing other country to develop. But today, these developed countries are helping the developing countries to establish nuclear power stations so that they will burn lesser coal. So that is one thing we should understand. Second is, see, if you look at Germany, again, it is part of the European Union. And as Vijay Kumar told, that European Union, it not only has a common currency, it also has a common power grid, the European grid. So to that, many countries are pumping in electricity and they are taking electricity from there. So if you see, for example, I remember 2015 data, if you see, Germany used to be the net importer of electricity and France used to be net exporter of electricity. What does it mean? That means France is putting a lot of electricity into the European grid. Now it is well known that about 80%, 76 to 80% of the electricity in France is generated by nuclear power. So whatever electricity France is putting into the European grid, 80% of it is nuclear. Okay, that means whatever Germany is taking from that European grid is majorly nuclear power. So it is something like this. You know, in India, we have a lot of pseudo vegetarians. They will say, I will not cook vegetarian food in my house, but if the neighbor gives me chicken or mutton, I will eat it. But in my kitchen, I will not spoil. So yes. I think these pseudo vegetarian people are there. So like that, Germany is turning out to be the pseudo anti-nuclear. It will say, I will not produce nuclear electricity in my country, but I don't mind if I'm getting it from France. So I think that should be understood. I think for the time being, I will not take a lot of time. But I think that comparison should never be done, that if some other countries are stopping nuclear power, why we should look at our need, our resources, our condition, and our policy should be our policy, not somebody else's policy. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir.
So this is Rupa from Bangalore.
Yes, Rupa.
So I just wanted to ask that, is there any established green method of detoxification of the effluent, like before it goes to the tailing pond or anything like that? Any established green method?
I don't know. Where nuclear power plants? Where you are mentioning?
With respect to mining.
That is with respect to mining. Tailing pond is
mine.
Yeah, uranium mines. It is with respect to uranium mines.
Yes.
In nuclear power plant, we don't have the problem.
Not the nuclear power plant, in the mines or even in the nuclear power plant, when you are disposing the low-level waste into the sea, before that, do you have any established SOP for green method of, like, using plants or some alga mass or like that, some typically which is not again toxic this thing to the environment, not chemical
Mostly
treatment.
No chemical treatment. They are all stored actually in the delay tanks. Our philosophy is only threefold. One is concentrate and contain, delay and decay, and dilute and disperse. Our all liquid effluents will be stored in different types of tanks. The activity levels will be controlled, and once they are controlled, they will be released with ample condenser coolant circulating pump water. So there will be a huge dilution water which is available, and at the discharge canal, we have to ensure that the authorized limits that is prescribed by the regulator for different types of radionuclides are complied at all the time.
Okay, I specifically want to, the effluent before, like mining, what sir said, that mining, what Malhotra sir said, in mining case, we have the tanks, effluent tanks, right? So they're all still chemically treated. So has there been any, at that point, has there been any green method established by now? Because it has been like since long, no, we are treating the effluents before releasing it to the tailing pond.
Rupa, I think they continue the practice of the conventional chemistry where they use strong chemicals. But as green chemistry is developing, probably, of course, I am also out of the profession for 5 years. But I personally know that everywhere this green chemistry is coming up. So definitely some procedures will be developed, will be taken up by the mining and milling authorities, where they will convert the present practice of using strong acids and bases for precipitation of all the radioactivity and confining it, and then dispersing the effluent. Probably in place of these strong acids, some green chemicals will come. But I don't have a ready answer right now.
I think.
And in a nuclear power station, anyway, you don't need it. As Vijay Kumar beautifully explained, in a nuclear power station, it is simply that effluent water is actually very, very low. So by the process of delay, by keeping it in delay tank, and by the process of dilute and disperse, it is taken care of.
That you are well aware.
Yeah.
So I meant the other thing which you said, no, the tailing pond, before releasing to the tailing pond.
No, I am Chandrajudan here. In tailing ponds, a series of research projects were done in Jamshedpur.
Yes, sir.
Then the Central Forest Research Institute and many other universities were involved in that. And they were trying to regenerate the tailing pond, reclaim the area occupied. But that the current status probably you can get from BRNS about what exactly has happened, but it is in the research area side on level only.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Anu.
Yes, sir. The
I
question
think we can stop
are
here.
over. I request Dr. P.V. Joseph to announce about the valedictory session that we are planning for the next week.
Thank you, Vijay Kumar sir, for
Thank you, sir.
delivering a very informative talk. You explained how nuclear energy can achieve the dual goals of ensuring sustainable energy supplies and curb greenhouse gases. Everybody enjoyed it. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Now you have two announcements, delegates. The link for submitting feedback will be available in the WhatsApp group ISAS WS tomorrow only. I am very happy to inform you that the phase 1 of webinar series is being wound up next Saturday. Dr. Dinesh Srivastava, Chief Executive, Nuclear Fuel Complex, Department of Atomic Energy, will be the chief guest and the speaker. He will speak on Indian fuel technology and exemplary success through self-reliance. All the 12 speakers who made this series a grand success through their speeches will be honored on the occasion. We invite all of you to next webinar. Expect your presence to witness that auspicious occasion. Let me stop here. Thank you. Over to Dr. Anugopinath.
Thank you, sir. Now I request Dr. Navya Anthony, Assistant Professor, Morningstar College, to deliver the vote of thanks.
Thank you, ma'am. Am I audible, ma'am?
Yes, yes.
Audible.
Okay. Honorable Chief Guest, Dr. S.K. Malhotra, sir. Resource Person of the Day, Dr. B. Vijay Kumar, sir. National President, Indian Society of Analytical Scientists, Dr. P.P. Chandrachudan, sir. Chairman of Webinar Committee, Dr. V.R. Nair, sir. Program Coordinator, Dr. P.V. Joseph, sir. And all other distinguished persons and ISAS delegates, students, and all other participants present here. A very good evening to one and all. It is my privilege to have been asked to propose a vote of thanks on this occasion. On behalf of ISAS and everyone gathered here, I would first of all express deep sense of gratitude to our distinguished guest today, Dr. S.K. Malhotra, former outstanding scientist, DA, and former national president of ISAS, for inaugurating this session. Thank you, sir, for sparing your valuable time with us to grace this occasion and enlightening us with your commendable talk. Next, I thank today's resource person of the day, Dr. B. Vijay Kumar, sir, for enhancing our understanding pertaining to the topic nuclear power for clean, green, and sustainable energy security. It was really an informative session. Thank you so much, sir. Next, I express a sincere gratitude to Dr. P.P. Chandrachudan, sir, for the efficiently organizing this webinar series with interesting topics. Thank you, sir. We are indebted to Chairman of the Webinar Committee, Dr. V.R. Nair, sir, for his valuable efforts in order to make this webinar series into a reality. I must mention our deep sense of appreciation and thanks to Dr. P.V. Joseph, sir, Program Coordinator, for the wonderful execution of each of the sessions. You have indeed put best of your efforts to make this event fruitful. I also express my gratitude to Dr. K.S. Maya, ma'am, former Principal, Government College, Tripunithura, for chairing this session. Thank you, ma'am. I also extend a heartfelt thanks to Dr. Anu Gobinath, ma'am, Assistant Professor in Chemical Oceanography, CUFOS, for her excellent comparing, which made each session more lively and run smoothly. Thank you, ma'am. I also extend a special vote of thanks to the technical team ISAS for providing every support for the smooth functioning of this webinar. Finally, I thank the participants and all persons associated with this webinar series directly and indirectly for their cooperation and support, which made this event a resounding success. Once again, thanking you all.